Hello, hello. What's up? What's up? It is a new day, it is a new week, and it's time to get social. My name is Kayvana, and welcome to the Introvert's Social Hour. Welcome to the Introvert Social Hour. Today, this is for the Twilight fans. I am so excited to talk about Twilight, the Twilight saga completely, not just the first one. So excited to talk about the Twilight saga in today's episode. Today, I've brought a friend of mine, a Twilight fan, stronger than I am, hands down, 100%. Um, Please welcome Gabby. They go by they, them. Gabby works for Planned Parenthood, and Gabby's note for all of y'all today is to remind you to get tested and get your pap smear. So that is a little low-key
Yes.
sponsor. But welcome, Gabby. How are you today? I'm excited to.
Good. I'm excited to be here, Kayvana. As a Twilight super fan, I'm ready to share the love and share my like unhinged theories with everyone.
Yes. I I fully love Twilight. Like I've loved Twilight since the beginning. Um, and then I remember when you told me that you loved Twilight, and I was like, okay, I think Gabby knows. Gabby knows Twilight. Um,
Just
but
like a testament to how insane I am about Twilight, like because it was not just me, it was me, my aunt, my sister, and we
Mhm.
had custom t-shirts made for every Twilight premiere and we would watch them like at the movie theaters as soon as they came out. That's how insane we were about it.
oh, but that's like that also just reminds me how impactful it was because I was thinking about that when I was like preparing for this episode a little bit was you don't get a lot of movies these days. We kind of seen it more this past year, but we don't get a lot
Hmm.
of movies these days where people like wild out when they prepare to go to the
Yes.
theater. Like I
Yes.
miss that. I miss that a saga. I think it was really just like being excited for the next one to come, the next one to come.
Yes. I
And
think
like it
part
was
of
a
it
thing.
too. No, yeah, I think part of it's like that like not being ashamed of being cringe. I think like people
Mhm.
are so afraid of being cringe and it's like well also I was like what probably like 9 years old so I was, like, didn't really care that much but also like
Yeah.
yeah I was like I'm gonna wear this shirt that says Gabby Hart Seth. Does anyone know who Seth is from the Twilight Saga in this mall?
Mhm.
Probably not. People are gonna think I'm insane but Seth is my favorite character and I'm gonna wear this shirt.
Yes. Wait, okay, so I have to know then. So Seth, if you were to pick any character, Seth is your
Oh my
guy?
god. Seth is like when I was in my Twilight era, I was like, I wish he was real so I could marry him. And then they casted Boo Boo Story and I was like, oh my god, like I need to marry this man. It was an
Mhm.
obsession. It was like actually unhealthy parasocial relationship to the max with a fictional character.
Completely valid though, because I was actually gonna mention that. That I think that was when I fell in love with Boo Boo Stewart because I'm still very
Yes.
much in love with him today
Oh
because
yeah.
he's in so many other things now. Like, um, at this point right now, he's in Good Trouble, and I watch Good Trouble currently, and I'm still like, oh
Oh.
yes, Boo Boo Stewart. Like
He's
when I learned he could dance from Descendants, like it was past my time at this point, but I was just like,
yes.
yes. So I love that he still exists in the Hollywood times of it all. It's really cool.
Yes. Yes, I love him so much. But yeah, Twilight was like a big phenomenon. Like you were saying, I don't really feel like we've had anything like that big. No series has come that close recently to being like that like influential and that widely popular. Like it's hard to attain that level of like influence now.
Yeah. I was also trying to think too, and I things probably came a little bit close, but I don't think like for example, like we had like Barbie last year. But I
Right.
think it's not gonna hit the same because really what it was I think it was like the buildup of it all, like building up for
Mhm.
waiting for the next thing. They're saying they might make a new like more Barbies. I don't know though, like if that's something you could like gain a hype on, you know. I feel
Yeah.
like that was kind of one and done. But
Mhm.
also too, Twilight had the books, the book
Yes.
lovers,
Yes.
who were ready for it. So what I heard though is you you said that you knew Seth and then they cast Boo Boo Sort. So did you read the books first and then you watched the movies, or how did it go? How did you get introduced to Twilight?
So I think the first movie was already out, and I hadn't really heard anything much about it. And then I had seen, I think my aunt was watching the movie, and I was like, "Oh, this is interesting." And then my aunt was like crazy into Twilight. She got super into it. She bought all the books. So then I watched the first movie with her, and then I read all the books after that. So technically, I saw the movies first, but it was like within the same week. Like within the same week, I watched the first movie and then I started reading the series, and so I finished all the books before even the second movie came out. Um, and I'm
Mhm.
definitely a book girl. Like if I had to choose one camp, I'm like I love the books.
Mhm.
And that's how I got into it. Did you read the movies,
Wow.
or did you watch the movies or read the books first?
So, which is what's actually really funny is it's the exact same pattern that you just said.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. I watched the first one, was like, okay, I like this. And then I read the books. But here's what's different, actually. Because I had watched the first one, I skipped right to New Moon. I know,
No.
I know, I know, I know. So I went straight to New Moon. I read New Moon, read Eclipse, read Breaking Dawn stuff. I even own Bree Tanner's novella. I read that too. I literally own
Oh,
every book except for Twilight.
no
Because of that,
way.
I know. But what I did do is eventually I did go back and read it, but I think I just like borrowed it from a library. So
Yeah,
that's why, but I
yeah.
said eventually though I should own it because I literally own every other book. Um, but yeah, that's what happened. So I
That
didn't
is
get into
so
the book
funny.
first. Hmm.
I feel like New Moon's a hard one to start on because it's like so intense and like not like it's boring, but it's like a lot of it's like Bella's inner monologue. So it's like
Hmm.
you really have that's like a commitment to like read that first one and be like, I'm gonna continue reading these because it's a depressing book.
It is, yeah. And we'll get to that too and how they reflected that in the movies.
Oh
Um,
my god.
literally playing the song right now in my head. Quality jam. But no, yeah, I don't remember how I felt necessarily reading them, but I was in. Like, even if
Yeah.
there was a moment where I got bored, like I was down. I was ready for it. And I think also to be fair, at the time, I was a Jacob girly. So I was like, this is his book. I was like,
Mhm.
let's go. Obviously, when you finish it, it's like, yeah, he never had a chance. But, that was his book at the time for me.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, it's so interesting, the different
Did you
trajectories.
did you read Midnight Sun?
No. It's
I
potentially on my list this year
Let me
though.
see. I want to show you. I have it. I bought
Mhm.
it like, oh my God, when Gavin had surgery, like, what was that? Almost a year ago now.
Mhm.
It's huge. It's
Yes.
thick,
Hmm.
and I haven't read it yet, but from what I've heard of it, I've just heard people like memeing on it and like making fun of it because he's just so like he's so much. He's so intense about everything and like
Hmm.
so I'm excited. I want to sit down and read it eventually, but I bought it because I thought like, oh, Gavin and I were gonna be at home and we're gonna read books together. And we just ended up being degenerates and playing video games instead.
A little Animal Crossing here, something else there.
Literally.
Yeah, no, I haven't read it. It's been on my mind though. Like in the back of it, I've thought
Hmm.
about it. If you read it before me, please let me know if it's worth it. I do, even if people are like, nah, because I remember when it first dropped, or even when it technically got leaked before it officially dropped,
Right.
people are like, oh, like this is very interesting. It's very different. It's like seeing from his perspective. He's like, yep. Like I remember people calling him kind of like a low key like drama queen, like super
Yes, he's
extra.
such a
Yeah.
he's such a
Mm-hmm.
drama queen. Oh my God, I forgot about that scandal when it got leaked. I think I read the first
Yeah.
chapter when it got leaked and I was like, I need more of it. And then the book came out and I like never really reached for it. But
Mm-hmm.
he is a drama queen. He's like well, I guess it's fair. He's like an old man. He's like in this modern world, but he is like super dramatic about a lot of things and like really crazy.
Yeah, 100%. Let's actually switch that because I want to talk about the saga in order
Yes, yes,
and
yes.
thinking of Twilight first, like the first book slash movie. We could
Yes.
talk about them together. When you first watched it, what characters popped out to you? What storyline like really captured you in?
I think it's really funny that you said like New Moon was Jacob's thing because even from the start I was a Jacob girly. I was like team Jacob. Like
Mhm.
he's hotter, why is she not getting with him? And so
100%.
I was super into like his story. That's why I was really excited about New Moon because I was like he seems interesting and he seems like there's more than just like this sweet little boy. I want to know
Hmm.
more about him. So I was super interested in him, and also cuz his dad, I was like his dad's in a wheelchair, but maybe it's like Percy Jackson, like how Chiron's in a wheelchair, but he's I was like maybe he's
Hmm.
special too. So I was super
Hmm.
interested in Billy. I was like, what's his vibe?
Yeah. So for Jacob, so you were team Jacob,
Yes.
where when you first watched it, did you, because for me, I thought he had a chance. Like, I'm young me. I know better
Mhm.
now, like after experiencing more stories and like fantasy stories specifically. But did you think like he had a chance? Like, I know you thought he had potential to be something else, be something more, but where did you think it was gonna go from there? And
I No, this is me being insane once again. I was team Jacob, but I didn't want them to end up together because I was
okay.
like, he's too hot for her. Like
Okay.
she's like so boring. Why
Hmm.
would Jacob want to be with her when he's so handsome and he could probably have some beautiful woman from the res? That was my
Hmm.
thing. And I was like, I'm a woman of color, pick me, Jacob. that
I'm like, I'm right here.
was that
I
was
love it.
my little like 10-year-old self was like, why would he want her? She's boring.
Mhm.
So I
That's
don't know, I wasn't
hilarious.
rooting for them, but I definitely was the tension was what like kept me going for like who's she gonna pick. I was like, oh, this love triangle is too juicy. That's like what kept
Hmm.
me going. Not necessarily the thought of like him winning, because I was like,
Yeah.
he could do better.
That I actually 100% agree with that. So I don't know if I remember thinking that when I was younger, but now after like like not the first time experiencing
Hmm.
Twilight, because I was like small. Like Twilight came out in like 2008. But I do remember as the time went on when, you know, Eclipse drops, Breaking Dawn, and stuff like that, you look back and you're like, Bella was never even worth all. It's like, what is
She's
no,
yeah, I'm like, mm,
no.
they had a
So like
whole
mm, I agree. He definitely could have done better. Not even just like it was just like she was a lot herself. And then maybe that's why her and Edward make a perfect pair.
yeah.
Because they were a lot together. Um, as far as like Twilight characters, I am curious who's like in the time of just Twilight, before we get
Mm.
other information outside of the first movie and first book, who was your favorite Cullen?
Oh, mm. My favorite Cullen, I think I want to say it was probably Alice, because she was the nicest
Vibes.
one. She was like good vibes. She was trying to be Bella's friend, and I really liked. Oh my God, her pixie. I think
Yeah.
about it. Like whenever I think about going in my short hair era, I'm like, oh my God, I could be like Alice from Twilight. Like
Hmm.
I just think she was a really great character. Like her styling in the movie, in the first movie was really great, and like her vibes were really good. She was the only one who was like, "Hi, Bella, like let's be friends," and I was like, "Oh, someone's being
Hmm.
nice to her."
Yeah, and giving her a chance, because
Mhm.
man, she really jumped into like an actual like physically cold world, but like mentally cold as well.
Yes.
Like everything was super sharp, even outside of the colons. Like even she got her human friends as if she wasn't human herself at the time, but she got her human friends. But even then, like it was they were being friendly for a purpose. Like it
Yes.
wasn't natural.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. What about
Um
you?
like, funnily enough, I also it was Alice. It's always been Alice. I don't think it ever changed for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um she's just she's iconic in my eyes. Really, she really is. Yeah.
Oh my God, her pitching in the baseball scene, like that little like
Yes.
dance. Oh my God, iconic. Her little pitching moment, like
Hmm.
she has a lot of iconic lines in the movie.
That too. Like she for me, she's just that girl. Like literally, I don't
She,
think she
yes,
can do any wrong in my eyes. She never
yes,
did. Like even I know I'm kind of jumping a bit, but even when she went like cold turkey, and like
yeah,
completely disappeared, like she did it for a reason. Like she's
yes,
she's one step, like actually one step ahead of everyone. Um,
literally.
but yeah, she for me, I just loved it. She was smart, she was caring, like
Hmm.
she was down to protect who she needed to, and yeah. I love
Yeah,
that.
and I think also like her relationship with Jasper was super interesting, and like I think being a teenage girl, you're like, "Oh my God, yeah, like I can fix him." Like she had that like I can fix him, and I was like, "Yeah, I can fix a man too." Like
Yeah.
I think that was also part of her appeal was like
Mhm.
being like a teenage girl like that, and like, "Yeah, I can fix this broken man." But I think their relationship is really interesting, like their dynamic, especially in the earlier movies when Jasper is like way more feral than later
Mhm.
on.
Yeah, then he kind of like softens. Yeah, I agree. I also Jasper was always a very interesting character, especially when he like barely said anything in like Twilight, the first one. Um, I will say what came second, who came second. I vibed with Emmett just because he was fun. Like he
Yeah.
just like so you have Alice who's sweet and like welcoming, and then you have Emmett who's just like super social, very much out
Yes.
there. She's like low key energy, and he's like very much on 110%. And I think that that
Yes.
was cool too because he gave that similar vibe of being welcoming. He was also
Yes.
careful. He was a bit more careful, I would say, than Alice was, but yeah, I appreciated that too, for sure, for sure.
Yes. I also liked Alice because a lot of people in the Twilight fandom, people are like, Alice gives gay vibes. I'm like, yes, that's why people
Yes.
love her. Like, there is a subsection of the Twilight fandom that's like Alice and Bella instead of Bella and
Mhm.
Edward. And I'm like, yeah, I see that. I see where that could come from.
Yeah, I was gonna say I could see that too. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there's like a whole bunch of fanfic somewhere.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, there's so many.
Uh-huh.
There's so many.
I am curious, you talked about the baseball scene a little bit. What is your favorite scene in Twilight? Like if you could watch only one scene for the rest of your life, what is the one you're going to?
I think the best scene is towards the end when they're at prom and they're dancing in that little gazebo. Because one, I love that
Mhm.
song. That song is so so beautiful, and it
Mhm.
fits the moment so perfectly. And I think for me, that scene is also the one that lined up the most directly with how I pictured it when I was reading the book. Like that one for
Mhm.
me had like the most overlap of like, oh my God, this is totally how I envisioned it. But also just like I feel like that scene when you watch just the first or when you just see the first movie, like you're like, oh my God, this scene's so romantic. Like, they're talking about like their future together and like how like she wants to be a vampire and he's like, no, no, no. And so,
Mhm.
and it's like very intimate. But then when you know, think about that scene in the context of the movie that comes next when he literally like is disappears on her, it's like
Yeah.
that intimacy becomes like something different. Like you can kind of almost start to read his hesitancy and like the gears turning of him being like, I have to protect her by leaving her, which like I don't know if that
Mhm.
was like intentional by Rob or that's just, that's something that comes with knowing what's coming after. But I
Mhm.
think that scene is like super, super beautiful and leads really well into the next movie and also aligns with what I pictured when I read it.
Yeah. It's I really like that one just for like as a for I don't even know how to explain it. As a person who just like loves the production of it all, of like things behind the scenes, I love how they thought about the lighting and they thought about where to highlight them. And I don't know, it was really pretty, like you said. It was very pretty. I actually do really love the baseball scene. I love a good action
Yeah.
moment.
Oh my
And if
gosh.
the baseball scene is long, so if I had to choose a section, I would definitely go from them playing baseball into when Laurent, Victoria, and James come in with that slow I
Yes.
was gonna say what oh my gosh, what is that machine? The running machine. I can't think of it. But yeah, that
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah, like
when
that
they're very
treadmill thing.
there we go.
Yes.
Yeah. The slow treadmill walk because they were on some kind of like treadmill thing. Um yeah, I would definitely go to that. I remember I read it. This is how intense it was. There was a book. They made a whole book on the behind the scenes of Twilight,
Yes.
and oh my gosh, I think I gave it away. How would I do that? That's doesn't make sense to me.
I
But
think you gave it to me. I think that's one of the books
where
you gave to me when you left college. Yeah. I
where'd
have
it go? I was like, where did it go? Because I know for a fact I don't have it. There you go. So
yeah, I
yeah,
definitely have it.
that's where I read the details at. That's so hilarious. I actually didn't
It's really
remember
funny.
where I put it. I was like, I know for a
It's
fact
here
I
with me.
don't have it anymore. Well, actually, I'm very glad that that is where it went because I was like kind of getting mad at myself. I was like, did I give it to Goodwill? Like, why would I do that? Um, Perfect. But yeah, I would say that's the one for sure. I love a good action scene. So, and you
Yeah.
just get the dynamics of the family a little bit. You get the dynamics of how Bella has a start of fitting in with his family. That's like the beginning
Mm.
trajectory of a lot of it. Even yes, we get like her coming to dinner and Rosalie
Oh my
breaking the
God. Oh my
salad
God.
bowl of like awkward moments like that. But I really think the baseball scene really like clips it in a little bit more.
I
Yeah.
agree. I agree. And it's like I think that's the most iconic scene of that movie. Like I think anyone hears that song, like anyone our age hears that song and we're like, "Oh my God, the Twilight baseball scene." Like you
Mhm.
can't hear that music without thinking about that.
Yeah, it was so good. Catherine, the director, she ate with the whole entire
She
movie. Not one complaint
did.
from me because also the whoever was the music person who chose all the
Uh,
music, they ate down.
that soundtrack 8, yeah, 100%. Have you seen that keychain? I don't know who sells it. I think it's somebody on like Etsy or something, but it's just
Mhm.
like a little keychain and it's like a blue like clear filter and then at the bottom it says directed by I think it's like what's her last name? Catherine Warwicky or something like that. And so
Yeah.
when you hold it up in front of your pictures, it makes it look like the blue tint of like the movie.
Stop.
It's so cute and funny. I like see it all the time on my Twitter. I'm like, "Oh my God, I want to buy that so bad."
That's actually genius because I was going to talk about that too. Like, I think that's something that also makes Twilight iconic. Like, it's iconic in the story, but I think something about how the first movie was created is what really set it up. Because like one, the iconic like blue vibe, gray vibe
Yes.
movie.
Yeah.
Um, the iconic song choices that nobody knew the songs of before, really like that. And then
Mhm.
all of a sudden it's tying together. You got the baseball scene. I also want to talk about some funnier scenes that I think are funny now that I'm an adult. Some to me. One, when she like confronts him and
Oh my
she's
God.
like, yeah, like he's like, hey, let's go to the woods. And he's as a dramatic person he is, zippity doo dying across the woods,
Oh my
flying
God.
her around. And then somewhere we get, say it, you know what I am, and
Oh my
then
God.
and then we get the sparkles that we were waiting for. I think the best liners that came out of that was one, I listened down, I'm like, why would he say that? So the lion fell in love with the lamb.
Oh my
When you really
God.
sit
He
and think
did.
about that, I'm like, sir, she just found out you're a vampire. I'm gonna need you to chillax for a second. Because when you really listen to that, it doesn't sound great. And
No.
then also to another one where she goes into his room and he flies her the out of his room. Hold on tight, spider monkey.
No.
Stop.
Yeah.
Stephanie, why would you do that?
Why would you make him say that? That is so cringe. Oh my God.
Yeah, so those are some of my cringe moments. I don't know if you have if any of those I said were similar to yours, but what are some like funny moments that you could pull from Twilight that also still make it iconic? It's things that we laugh about as adults now.
I think about the apple scene in the lunchroom.
Mhm.
Oh my God. Because the way that was like all over the marketing, his like little pale hands with the apple
Mhm.
and like the way it was just an awkward way to catch it. It was also like she's gonna eat this apple, you just kicked it off the floor, like
Seriously, yeah.
and again with like the behind the scenes stuff when they talk about like how many takes it took for him to like actually catch it, like they were about to give up on that scene
Hmm.
and they got it on like the last take and it like became that whole like like the iconic Twilight apple thing, but it's like
Hmm.
so cringe and awkward and what's another thing that I was thinking of Hold On Tight Spider Monkey. That is like
Mm-mm-mm.
stop. Why would you say that?
No,
Like it's
it's
giving me full body like the ick just thinking about it.
yeah. Another one too that I always think is funny and connecting to like the meme world of Twilight is when she first comes into class and he gets a whiff of her.
Oh my god. And
That's a good one. Because we see that a lot in memes too.
mhm.
So his face. I also think it's always funny. We get his reaction a lot in the meme world of today, but I always think it's funny when she goes back to like check and see if she's okay, if she smells. And I'm just like, "Oh, Bella, like it's
Just
okay."
cuz like that is like such a real experience too though. You're like, "Oh my god. I have to go sit next to this handsome boy and he thinks I smell bad. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I would not want to be Bella in that moment.
100%. Yeah, no, because like you just said, I was gonna say it's very relatable. And that's why I think we could when we were younger, like we could also be like, oh my gosh, like yes, like
Yes.
see this very much happening. And then one thing that would never happen, which is totally just movie, he runs out of the classroom. And then, but yeah, no, like the secondhand embarrassment of that situation is just intense. Intense. As far as their storyline, moving on to New Moon, we talked about it a little bit. He leaves her in the dust. Before
No.
that, let's talk about before that though. I still no excuse to me why he leaves her in the dust. But of course, there's a dinner. She has her it's on her birthday, by the way.
Oh my God.
I'm like reliving it, and I'm like, Edward, like, I don't. She forgave him so fast. She didn't. She wasn't even mad at him.
Seriously.
Might
No,
I
yeah,
add?
she was like, I
There
just
was
wish he
nothing
would
for her to
come
forgive.
back.
Yeah, there was nothing for her to forgive. Like, I just it astonished me. But Jasper had a moment because once again, like you said, he was like Pharaoh. He had a moment. She was bleeding. He tried to come for her. It was a whole big thing. Edward has this moment. And he's like, I don't know. He's like, the safe thing to do is for me to leave. Sure, Edward, your family's still here.
Dude,
Like,
like,
I don't know. Like, yes, they left, but like, were they really, I don't know. But then also, like, too, and we see it in New Moon. Yes, you left, but you're connected with Bella now. It doesn't disappear. So then
right.
Laurent comes,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a whole thing. But let's talk about how we get to see Bella and Jacob's relationship develop. And I'm just even talking about their pure friendship. I liked
Mm-hmm.
seeing that develop too. What were some of your like favorite moments of seeing Bella and Jacob develop, getting to know each other, becoming friends, even more friends than they were before? Her finding out he's a werewolf, that was a moment too. So there's options there.
I think something that is like for me was more apparent in the books than it was in the movie was, that whole process around kind of that the Quileute like becoming wolves, especially in like that Jacob era where they become like these really moody guys and they're like withdrawing a lot from their friends and Bella's reaction to that, like her like confronting the other guys and Sam and being like, "What the fuck are you doing to Jacob?" Like,
Mhm.
because for her, like that's like her last lifeline. Like, yeah, she has her friends at school, but like really, like she's been clinging to Jacob ever since Edward's gone. And so like
Mhm.
for her to like go and confront these and be like, "What are you doing to him?" Like, please, this is my only friend. I thought
Mhm.
that was very like wholesome. Like her fighting for Jacob in that way, like totally
Mhm.
not romantic. Her just like, this is my lifeline and I need this. I thought that was like that felt made warm and fuzzies inside.
Yeah. I never even thought of that scene like that. I automatically just thought like, Bella can be feisty when she wants to be. I just thought of it like of her being like his protector in a way. But yeah, like also like, no, like, dude, he's my guy. This is my lifeline. Like, yeah, I like that idea
Yeah.
too. Yeah. Um, I always think about this. Their dynamic is so interesting in New Moon because of the fact that Jacob kind of like finds his voice a bit more. And so like
Mhm.
the Jacob that she did know previously, like and like, nah, you're not gonna talk to me any kind of way or treat me any kind of way. Like, so that was a vibe. So for example, I really love, I've always loved the scene. It's just once again, I've always been Team Jacob. When it's raining, I love that they decided to just make it pour.
Mhm.
And she comes and confronts him, and she's like, no. So another time where she's like, no, like we're friends, like what the heck is going on? Um, and she's like, "What's going on? Where you been?" Et cetera, et cetera. And he's like, just go home, Bella, go away. And then I cannot remember who comes out. Is it Sam that comes out and is like, and like, yeah, he
Yeah,
gets
I think
they
I
get
think it is.
they get in their beef in werewolf form, and she like freaks out. I love the freak out face. I don't know. I love that moment where she's like, "What am I seeing right now?" I also think it's kind of funny though because I'm like, Bella, you already know that vampires exist. you were doing all this research before and it became true. You're being told all this information about werewolves and the idea of like tribes and things like that. You never were well into like, maybe they do exist. Like you didn't like I don't know, but I really love that scene specifically because I like the coloring of it. New Moon is of course a brighter movie
Mhm.
compared to Twilight. I think each movie does have their own like color tone for sure.
Mhm.
But I feel like in that moment you do kind of a little bit of a blend of like that dark rainy day, but also that shading of New Moon where it's a bit lighter though. It's not like this blue. It still feels very orange, even though it is kind of like rainy. I don't know.
Right, right, right. Yeah, they did do the coloring really well on that one.
Hmm.
I wish I do. Part of me does wish they would have kept like the blue throughout. I think it would have been like
Yeah.
iconic, but I get why they couldn't. Like the first movie, when I go back and watch it, I'm like, this is so intense. So I am
Hmm.
glad, yeah, that New Moon's like brighter, has more color to it, but still has that like Forks
Yeah.
vibe.
Yeah. I think it was definitely necessary, especially because eventually we do go out and they get to Italy. I believe it's Italy,
Right.
and they have to go to the Volturi. Also, a very iconic scene with Alice speeding in that red car.
Oh my
Um,
god.
um, literally chasing after Edward once again. Um, and yeah, it needed to be orange there for sure. They can't go to
Yeah.
Italy like dark and gloomy on a celebration day. But yeah, well, one really exciting thing for New Moon is that we get to meet the Volturi, and I am super curious to know. I'll tell you mine first. My fave Volturi person is Jane, aka Miss Dakota Fanning. I
Oh
love that she
yeah.
just doesn't care. Um, she I don't know. She just really doesn't care. Now, do I like if I'm in the Twilight world, do I like her? No, absolutely not. She's actually high key annoying. Like, get out of my business. You're ruining it for me. But I kind of love that she's a little too loyal in my opinion, but she's just willing to do whatever. She so she's a vibe for me. But do you
Yeah.
happen to have a favorite person out of curiosity?
My favorite is the one who like doesn't want to be there. Is his name?
Oh my
I think
gosh,
his
is it
name's
the older one?
Marcus. Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
think
yeah, with
so.
the
I
long
had wrote
hair.
the name down. I think, yeah, Marcus. Yes. Mm-hmm.
He
Yeah.
like does not want to be there. He's like, bro, we're so fucking old. Like, why
Hmm.
are we still in all this bullshit? Like, he is my favorite, and he doesn't really like stand out too much. I feel like until the later movies.
Hmm.
But I just think Arrow's too creepy. Like I forget that
Yeah,
actor's name, but he like plays him really well when he does that
he does.
scary little laugh. Like, oh my god, he's insane, and I
Mm-mm.
love it. But he's too creepy for me. I'm like, you're a little freak, kid. I
Yeah.
don't want to engage with that.
Yeah. Even when he smiles, especially when we get first introduced to him in New Moon, like the times where he's smiling or laughing and or both, and it's like, dude, it was never the time. Like,
It was
like you're out of context. Like, um,
God.
yeah, no, he's a lot. We also get that I would say it's pretty iconic. It's not talked about as much compared to like the entirety of Twilight's other battles and scenes, but my imagery always goes to Edward's head getting smashed into the floor.
Yeah.
That's kind of
Yes.
wild, but the CGI I think was pretty solid on that though.
I think it's amazing the way they did, like, they carry this throughout the movies, but yeah, the like little crackles, like it really, I think, solidifies the picture of like, yeah, these are like literally stone cold creatures. Like
Hmm.
they don't bruise, they don't bleed. They literally crumble like marble. And I think like, yeah, the CGI was done so incredibly well that it like that yeah, I that you're right, that scene is not as iconic, but I think it sets the tone for like the rest of the like battles in the series.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, and we're gonna talk about that too once we get to Eclipse. But before we do switch to Eclipse, I wanted to talk about the battle that we did mention between Laurent and the Wolves. That was a pretty solid
Oh
one
yeah.
too. Bella continuously getting caught up in between fights. Um, but that one was pretty solid too, and getting to see also once again how a vampire dies and how he cracked, or more so got his head pulled off, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a really good one too. I think one thing that the Twilight Saga did that they did not mess up on was their werewolf CGI. Their money went to that. And we're gonna talk about what it didn't go to. Um, let's move on to
Oh,
Eclipse. Um, when it comes to Eclipse, I think so. For me, how I always pictured in my head, Twilight was Edward's movie, and obviously it's not this way, but Twilight's Edward's movie.
yeah.
New Moon is Jacob's movie. Eclipse is now the final like battle of who gets the girl, even though
Yes.
we already know who it is, but like the final battle of who gets the girl, and we definitely see that
Yes.
the push and pull of their
Mhm. Mhm.
characters, like their beef with each other. We get that straight
Mhm.
up in the beginning. Jacob comes in on his bike and then like this is at school, right? And then he comes to pick up Bella for some reason. I can't remember the why, but Edward's like kind of he doesn't say anything because he's Edward. He's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
okay, go ahead, Bella. But I remember that beef. Or am I thinking? I think that's the end of New Moon. I'm mixing it up.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah. I
I
think
think
that
that's
is
the
the
end of New
end.
Moon. But that vibe sticks through in Eclipse. So, which is that's actually a good note then. New Moon sets Eclipse up really well then, because that
Yes.
being the end of New
Yes.
Moon, that's exactly what Eclipse is the rest of the time of that push and pull. Um, I love one. It was very interesting. I remember when I was younger, I was like, oh my gosh, they changed the actress of Victoria. It wasn't that big of a deal, Kavana. Like it,
No, but
either
it
way, it was
felt
fine.
like a huge deal.
It did. I remember all of us being shook. I don't know. I feel
Yeah.
like that was very universal. Um, because I remember I was like, "Did you hear that?" Da, 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 da. But no, it was fine. But and then also too, never connect the dots. I can't think of her name right now, but she's in a lot of movies now. The person who played Victoria
Yes.
number two, and
Yes. Yes.
literally
Yes.
about a year ago is when it finally clicked that she was the one who played Victoria number two, because I've always seen her in her blonde
Yes.
era, and I
That's her
it just
name. It's gonna
never
bother
connect
me
the
now.
dots. Yeah. Um,
Because wasn't she also in what other movie was she in, like Burlesque or something like that? The one with
was she in Burlesque? Oh, see,
I
now you're
might
gonna
also
throw me
be
off.
now I'm like they all have
I don't,
similar faces,
yeah,
but
I don't
she's in like a lot of other stuff.
she is. I don't remember her being in Burlesque, but you could be right. You very well could be right.
Could
Um,
also be wrong.
yeah, I don't know. But no, she's been in a lot of stuff, and my brain never connected the dots. But no, I think she ate with her role. Um, I
She did.
I I really love the idea. So I like a good villain story, and obviously we see
Mm,
her. She's always been a villain, but I think we get her villain part two origin story at the start of Twilight, or at the end of Twilight when she loses James. We get to see that little continuation of New Moon. Obviously, she's not in it, but her name is mentioned. She's still a part of it. Three, I love that we get a full plot story, like a full breakdown.
yes.
She's making a whole operation. What I
Hmm.
am very like, I love that we get then the B plot characters now, like more B plot characters. I can't think of
Hmm.
Homeboy's name, but he was Victoria's like mini me.
What was
Like
it?
the
Was his name Riley?
Oh, you're right. Yes, Riley. Riley was done wrong. Poor
Yeah.
Riley. That was that was the beginning of Eclipse. Riley was done wrong. And that scene was a solid way to be done. Also a rainy day. I think or just wet. I feel like anyway, it just was like it was raining or you could tell it had rained. Um that was so interesting though because obviously we don't get a lot of Riley as human before he like literally
Hmm.
dies in like the first 5 minutes. But that was interesting to see how he quickly just became like super villain and then
Yeah.
creating other mini me's. The story that always sticks with me is the story of Bree Tanner. I read that before
Hmm.
Eclipse came out. Um,
Oh.
yeah, and I remember I was like, I know about Bree. I was like, how they gonna do Bree in the story and in the movie? I had hope, even though I knew better.
Oh. Yeah.
Even though I knew better, but um, I love that background. I really feel like she
Hmm.
should have survived. Oh. But
I
Stephanie didn't want us to
know.
be happy, and it's okay.
I feel like yeah, I totally could picture her life with the Cullens. Like I totally was like,
Right?
yeah, they would like take her in, she'd be the newbie. But then I feel like I don't know, how would that affect? I feel like Bella's not the main character anymore. There's a new girl. Move over, Bella. There's a new girl in town.
Yeah. I could see that. Maybe her taking over a little too much. Hmm. I never thought about it like that. That's very true, though. It's very possible. I feel like her and Alice could have been really good friends, though.
Yes, I would have loved. I feel like Alice could have had a little sister. Like,
Yeah.
that would have been such a cute, like, a really great, I think, friendship to explore.
Yeah. Ugh, rip the
Justice for
breed.
Pretender.
Yeah, right? But what is the storyline that stuck out to you in Eclipse or even like an individual? Because we get so many like new characters, but then we also get like evolutions of characters we had already seen.
Yes. I really like the whole like training arc of Eclipse. Like
Mhm.
when, like wolves and vampires are like, all right, we are gonna have a war, like we have to prepare for this. I think
Mhm.
all of those scenes were like I really appreciated them both in the books and in the movie. I think the book went into like a little bit more detail about it, but like you said, like the action scenes, like I feel like in the book especially, because I don't know, for me when it comes to like action and fighting scenes, I appreciate like technique or like strategy. So
Mm-hmm.
the way Stephanie describes it in the book where she talks about like, different matchups like Alice versus Emmett, and she talks about like, and especially through the eyes of Bella, who's like very observant, like you get
Hmm.
to get a lot of that detail of like the different styles of fighting that there are, the different like strategies that people use, people who have gifts versus people who don't have gifts, right? And so I really like that whole arc because I feel like it's super detailed, but not like bogged down by like crazy detail. Like it really is like an immersive, I think, experience within that book.
Yeah. I I that's a good one because I don't think that's another one I feel like people don't really talk about so much. They talk about the battle, but they don't talk about the getting ready for the battle. I think that does get lost in the sauce sometimes. So that's a good mention. Um, I was gonna say specifically for a director's and writer's choice, I love the battle because how shook they got their readers in
Mhm.
the readers to movie. Because as a reader, we were like, okay, we're curious to see how things are gonna change. Because of course they gotta change some stuff up, but we
Mhm.
know what's gonna happen. And when they're like plot twist, we're killing Carlisle. Huh? What?
You're like, hang on a second here.
I don't
What's
remember
that
that being
about?
in this. Um, I r-
Yeah.
remember seeing reactions to it. Um, or like reading reactions to it, and they really did their job there. That was smart. I remember like being like I wasn't even mad. I was like, that's actually really genius
Like
because
you
you're
got
right.
me.
Mm-hmm. You gotta stump the people who know you gotta stump the people who know the books. So that was a good way to stump them. Um,
That was the
I
Breaking Dawn battle, right?
Oh my gosh, you're so right. Not me skipping ahead.
You're just
Not me
excited.
skipping ahead. I am. Let me go back though, because now my brain is regrouping. The battle between Edward and Victoria. You said
Yes.
the mention between the cracks. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I just skipped like that. How dare I? The battle between the cracks. Not the battle between the cracks. The battle in regards to the cracks. Um, when Edward gets his face cracked at some point, and almost dies via Victoria.
Mhm.
But the way he officially kills her is kind of
Yes.
wild.
Yeah, he meant that with his chest when he did
Mhm.
that.
Literally. Yeah. Whole chest. Um, and I do they just have so many good battles. That was a pretty solid one too. Um, I for a funny moment, I wanted to mention the moment where Jacob, Edward, and Bella are all they have to be in the tent together. That's
Oh my
hilariously
god.
awkward. And then Bella's cold, so then Jacob has to like hold her to warm her up, and Edward just has to sit there.
And the worst
Um,
part is like Edward can hear Jacob's thoughts. And so
yeah.
Jacob is like, oh my, being a menace, absolute menace in his mind.
Mhm.
And on the outside, Bella's like, oh, Jacob's being so sweet. And in his head, he's like, LOL, Edward, like,
Mhm.
you cuck, just watch this. It's so.
Yeah.
And I think, they did a pretty good job of it in the movies where Edward was like, can you at least keep your thoughts to yourself? I think
Mhm.
that was really funny.
Yeah. It was good. I like adding when they add those comedic effects to it.
Mm.
And that we see that even more in the next two, for Breaking Dawn Part One, Part Two, and for the book just Breaking Dawn. We see that relationship even more, and I think it's really fun to watch, even though
Um,
Bella's not 100% aware of everything.
I think another like not like funny, but like adds to the love triangle, especially in Eclipse. I don't remember if they like super got into it in the movies, but in the books, basically like Edward and Jacob had like shared custody of Bella. Like Edward would drive up to like the border of the res and like drop
Yes.
Bella off, and Jacob
Hmm.
was always picking her up like shirtless and stuff and like let's go
Hmm.
for a ride on the motorcycles and shit. And I thought
Yeah.
that to me, like looking back now when I think about it, is so funny. Like Bella for real had two boyfriends. Like she really was like having her cake and eating it too, and
Hmm.
no one could tell her nothing.
She was chilling. No, they did do one scene like that, where they stopped. He picked her up. Edward was, in his feels, of course. And then Jacob was rubbing it in his face, of course.
Yeah, he was like, "Where's my
Um,
hug at?"
hmm And I think I could be wrong, but I feel like Edward said something along the lines of like, you don't got a shirt on, like, or something like that. I could be wrong, but it was obvious in his acting, or he
Yeah.
said something about his lack of shirt.
Yes, yes, yes. I
Um,
do remember that scene.
but yes, quality. But yeah, Bella was really having it all, especially because she was with Edward, and then she kissed Jacob on the mountain. I was like,
Oh
girl.
my god! Oh my god! Yes.
hmm So she was like, but in a way that was like, yes, I was seeing Jacob. I knew that it was gonna happen. I was like, they finally kissed. This is in her way, like being like, thanks, Jacob. This is our only kiss. This is just the
Mhm.
kiss to kind of like end whatever you thought was happening here. That's the vibe that I got.
Yeah.
But no, Eclipse is I think also too, we don't fully go back to that like bluish look, but
Mm.
I feel like the color vibe is there again, where we get like this. I don't know. It's very grayish white instead of like bluish
Yes.
gray, if that makes
Yes.
sense.
I think
And
like
yeah.
following what you said earlier, where like Twilight was Edward's movie, and that was like the bluish one. And then you said earlier, New Moon has more color. That's because it's Jacob's movie. And I
Mhm,
think Eclipse does a really good job because you said that push and pull between Edward and Jacob. It like has those moments where it's like it's got those really warm moments like on the res, and then on the mountain it's got those super cool moments. And then when they kiss, like the screen is like it's like kind of yellowy again.
but
So it's like
yeah.
I feel like that like the color also follows like the Team Edward versus Team Jacob.
I'm so glad you mentioned that too, because look at us analyzing the movie
Look
first
at
off.
us.
Right? We're smart. That's so genius though, because you're so right. We don't get a lot of sun on the mountains, but for
Mhm.
some reason when she kisses him, the sun is like bopping on them.
Mhm.
Yeah. Wow, you're a genius, Gabby. That that's a quality moment right there. Wow. I gotta pay attention to movies more. That was good. I'm just sitting here. Moving on to Breaking Dawn, part one and part two. We'll talk about both of them.
Okay, okay, okay.
Um, First thing I'm just gonna get out my head because I forgot to mention. I don't want to forget to mention it. We talked about their CGI.
Oh my god. Resume.
Yes, it will never be lived down, Renesmee. It will never be lived down. They handled their CGI so well every other time. Most of their money must have went to all their CGI and the good songs they had, because when it came to the baby being made,
Jesus.
Renesmee was the scariest child I think any of us have ever seen. And we were all
Literally.
incredibly disappointed and scared. Um,
Yeah, no, she's like supposed to be beautiful. Like she's supposed to be like this beautiful baby that like everyone's like this baby is striking like unnaturally beautiful. And I guess they just ran with unnatural and forgot to add
mhm,
like the gorgeous part because literally the amount of memes I see of the baby
mhm.
Renesmee CGI like it's so bad.
It's yeah. And I remember too, like they had like a fake baby on set, but the fake
Mhm.
baby had that face though still. So I'm like, nobody was gonna say anything. I guess they were all trying to keep their job. I was like, nobody was gonna say like, hey, baby's actually not looking too great. We sure we want
Baby's
this?
busted. Baby's
Baby's busted.
busted.
Yeah. Like, are you sure? But the one thing they did have that came through for them, bringing it back now that my brain's on the right track, the battle scene.
Yes.
Um, uh, the biggest battle scene I think of all of Twilight, and then we get the plot twist of I'll never forget like
Oh
Carlisle's
my God.
head being held up by his hair, and I was like, no, they didn't. No, they didn't. They
I think I
wouldn't ever.
screamed in the movie theater.
Hmm.
I think I screamed like,
Valid.
"This is not what happens!" I was like really, really affected by this.
Hmm. Validly angry. And then a few minutes later, you're like, okay,
Like, ah, okay, we're
okay.
fine.
Like Alice, you got me there for a second.
They had us in the first half, not gonna lie.
Right. That was good. I also equally enjoyed my favorite thing about uh Breaking Dawn as a whole, part one and part two. I love that once again we got more characters, um,
Hmm.
and we got to just get more of an understanding of like the world outside of the Colin family. Um,
Yes.
and it was really cool to see. Yeah, I like meeting other vampires.
Yes. I think Benjamin, is that who Rami Malek plays?
I think you are correct. That sounds right to me.
He's one of my faves. I think that was such a great actor to cast because if I'm remembering correctly, Benjamin is like actually also pretty young. Like well, both when he was turned he was young and like is a young vampire and is like incredibly gifted and also like incredibly curious about the world and is like
Mhm.
almost like a Rapunzel type situation where like I don't remember who his like dad or like whoever changed him was, but like was
Yeah.
definitely trying to keep him a secret. One from the Volturi, but also just like in general, keep him sheltered from the rest of the vampire world. So he was one of my favorite characters in the movie because he was just like so curious and like so I don't know, just exciting. Like his character was fun, his gift felt very like fresh and new and like I don't know, it was exciting.
Yeah. You just had me thinking too, because I thought about his character as well. But also, I have not seen that man in a long time. I'm like, where did he go?
No, yeah, he hasn't
Um,
been in anything recently.
no, I can't remember the show he was in. I started watching it, I never finished it. That was a solid show though. But it's been a few years and I haven't seen him in anything since it ended. I'm like, where are you at? And you just had me thinking. I was like, um, yeah. So I'm gonna search that up later. Like, anything coming up? Um, I for Breaking Dawn, I do love I think the wedding scene is really pretty. So genius of that. Like, yes, the whole, like, no complaints on it, quite frankly. Everything was solid. We get It Will Rain
Oh
by
my
Bruno
god.
Mars. We
Oh my
get,
god.
for both of the movies, we get A Thousand Years by Christina Perri. I also love that we got like special like soundtracks.
Yes.
Um, it's just they wrapped it up beautifully. I think
Yes.
also not a part exactly of the movie, but the ending of Breaking Dawn Part Two, where they wrap it up with A
Oh,
Thousand Years.
oh
Like,
my
shut
god.
up. And then they give you their faces and the name and the actor, like who they
Yes.
played and the actor's name, and literally like wrap up the whole entire like saga.
Yes.
Genius.
That
Genius.
part makes me cry like every single time. Whether I've like going through a marathon and rewatch the whole series or
Mhm.
like I'm just rewatching the Breaking Dawn movies or even just part 2, like when it comes to that part at the end where they like show, like Bella and Edward's relationship over the whole series and then
Mhm.
like all the characters like literally I start sobbing.
Yeah, I was gonna say that too because I did a rewatch sometime last year of the whole thing. I just rewatched the whole thing together, and I was like, Twilight has been out for how long? And I'm over here crying at the end wrap. I was like, they have moved on. Like, Robert is Batman now. Like, can we not be crying over this? But
Oh
no,
my
it's good.
gosh.
They really hit that emotional spot.
Yes.
With the black and white and everything. It's just
Oh my
very,
god. Oh my god.
they're very
And
smart.
speaking of the wedding, I'm planning my wedding right now, and
Yeah.
since we got engaged, I have Gavin knows already. Like my
Mhm.
wedding party knows already. I am walking down the aisle to Turning Page, Sleeping at Last. Like I'm
Yes.
there's like a instrumental version
Mhm.
that we picked for me to walk down the aisle to, and like unfortunately I'm that cringe. Like that is
Do
the
it.
song I'm walking down the aisle to. So be ready, Gavin.
I mean, as Gavin knows, like there
Yeah,
shouldn't
right.
have
He gets
been.
it.
Yeah,
Like if that was a surprise to you, maybe this relationship wasn't what we thought it was. So
right.
good thing he wasn't surprised. But yeah,
Yeah,
my family's like, "Are you serious? Like from the Twilight movie, like from Bella's wedding?" I'm like, "Yeah." Like, well, it's a beautiful
100%.
song.
I feel like what would have been more cringe is if you would have chose like one of the bigger ones. Like if you would have chose "It Will Rain" or "1,000 Years," that would have been more cringe. I think
Mhm.
you're on the right spot. Also, too, I feel like it 100% makes sense. I feel like wedding songs should be more personalized, like to the people. So
Mhm.
when people choose the same normal ones, like, what's that John Legend song, All of Me, okay,
Mhm.
everybody's doing all of me, everybody's doing this. So no, that's good. I like that. That's a good one.
Yeah,
Um,
just a testament to how insane I am about Twilight. Walking down the aisle to the Twilight song.
you're a true fan, and that's what matters. Um, I wanted to talk about the cultural impact of Twilight over time. I'm curious, I've thought about it and I've wondered about myself, but why do you think it became such a popular, iconic time and not even just like a moment, like it lasted for years and it still lasts now. Like what makes it so iconic that even in 2024 people don't let go of it? It's in memes, the music gets played, you know, a special time of the year happens and we're like, oh, Twilight time. Like, like what makes it so like special to people?
It's hard. I think now I have to do some research. Hang on. Because I'm like thinking about the other franchise that was that big, and to like me what stands out was like Harry Potter, right? Like the Harry Potter
Yeah.
franchise was like pretty much that, and like Hunger
Mhm.
Games was big around that time too. Like I think
That's true.
also that time period, like the like late 2000s to like mid 2010s, like this genre of like YA like was having its moment just in general, like
Mhm.
specifically this like I don't know how you would classify those three, but like
Like, hmm.
I can't find the words, but that genre
Yeah.
of like the main girl moment, like it
Hmm.
was having its because Divergent was also out around that time, and
Hmm.
like people were really into that. But I think Twilight reached so many different groups. Like it had us teenage girls by the throat, like we were not
Hmm.
going anywhere. But
Yeah.
also too, like my aunt is like 20 years older than me, and she
Mhm.
was like also crazy in it, and like I know a lot of other like women in that age, like stay-at-home moms or like Twilight
Right.
girlies. Like
Hmm.
I was part of this website called I think the twilightsaga.com, and it
Hmm.
was like a fan like website where people would post like fan fictions, people would post fan art. It was like a whole thing. People would have discussion threads about the books, and there was people of every age on there. Like I was posting my little fan fictions I was writing, and I was like, I am in elementary school, and people were like,
Hmm.
I am a 40-year-old woman and I'm enjoying this fan fiction written by a 9-year-old, and like that was like the online friends I would make.
Yeah.
And so I think Twilight really like had something for everyone. Like a lot of older women were like, "Oh my God, Edward," And so I think that's why it was so like widespread. I think like it wasn't just a movie for teens, and so that's why it got so huge.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good note because I see it in the world of my teen brain when I was watching it. And I wasn't really thinking about who else was watching it. I was just vibing on my own. But when you look back now, it's like, yeah, I think what's also cool is that because it's so reachable, no matter what age you are, even after years after, it's still attachable, not just because of nostalgia, but yes, you watch it with a different lens, but you still appreciate it. Um, and it's just never it never gets tiring or never gets bored. Um,
Mm-mm.
and that's what's something that's really cool too, and that goes to the people who created it as well. I will say I haven't reread the books in a very long time. So that's something on my list to do at some point. Um, but I rewatch the movies on occasion, and it's a comfort vibe too as well. Like
Hmm.
for sure, for sure.
I think
Um,
too, like that time period, like people like reminisce about that a lot. And that's like I think like the
true.
rewatching of it brings people back to like that time. Like you said, it's like
Hmm.
a comfort watch. Like you're like, oh yeah, this was when better days, things were simpler.
Hmm. That is true though. I really do think that era of time was like solid. I don't know. Excuse me, I always think back to like my middle school days. That's around the time
Hmm.
Twilight was already out because Twilight came out when I was in elementary school, but like we were still getting New Moon, Eclipse, Breaking Dawn. You were right, like we got Divergent and all those things. We were getting Hunger Games. I remember I had to read Hunger Games when I was in eighth grade. It was just like that in addition to the music that we were getting.
Hmm.
So, so I don't know. Like, yeah, I 100% agree. Like, I think about that time and I'm like, yeah, there's no misses there, I don't think. I remember I enjoyed every piece of content outside of just the Twilight Saga, like anything that was being put out. I also think it was a big era of book to movie, but more
Mm,
specifically YA, dystopian, or fantasy book to movie. Like I feel like that was a really big push that was happening during that
yes.
time. Um, I've talked about this on different episodes, but we were also getting like Vampire Academy. They tried. They flopped,
Mm.
but they tried. That was a thing too. So I definitely do think Twilight set the tone for sure
Mhm.
for what was to come after, but it showed people that was possible. And then, other people definitely followed out, specifically with like the vampires and the werewolves and the witches and stuff like that. They showed it was possible to be a big movie franchise specifically because we hadn't gotten a big movie franchise outside of like Harry Potter and stuff like like for fantasy in regards to like
Yeah.
the cliche girl meets boy, boy's not
Yes.
human. Like we hadn't got that in a while, and definitely not in movie form. Like yes, we had Buffy,
Hmm.
but that was TV, and
Right.
so it was just really cool to get that. Um, Twilight came out first, but then of course we get the Vampire Academy like a year late. Not the Vampire Academy. Oh my gosh, the Vampire Diaries a year later.
Hmm. Hmm.
But I really do think Twilight set the tone for sure that it was possible on the big screen.
100. I think Twilight's reach too. Oh, some of it is because of Stephanie. Like, so, Stephanie's a Mormon woman, and I feel like her having that identity as the author of these books gave a lot of permission to people like of that same religion who are like, because there's a lot of like rules, a lot of do's and don'ts, especially regarding things that are like sexual in nature or like about desire and like
Mhm.
things like that. And so I think her having the identity and writing this also reaches that community in, whereas, if that was not her identity as an author, they may have not, felt like comfortable getting into this type of content, something that is so like because I think was it more pretty recently Kristen Stewart did an interview and talked about Twilight and she was just like the themes of it of like desire and like wanting something that you shouldn't have,
Mhm.
it's like a very gothic inclination. And I think that's something that someone like who is Mormon can definitely have a lot to comment on, like a lot of like battling with desire or things that are like considered taboo. And so I think
Mhm.
that is also like touches a community that may not have been reached by this saga had it not been for the fact that Stephanie Meyer is also Mormon.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that because that's very true too, because that's a very common feeling even outside of like being Mormon. I think of
Hmm.
like even like for example Christian community that could be applied there. And even if someone who's not religious, like that push and pull of I don't know if you would call it a fight necessarily, but that I don't know, for lack of a better word, like that internal battle that some people have can
Mm.
go through. Especially too, like you grow up, you're a teenager, you got hormones, things like that. So that's another
Yes.
struggle in
Yes.
itself. So yeah, no, that and then anybody who's older could relate to that feeling. And so yeah, it's definitely that's a good, once again, I'm saying it like universal connection as well. So
Yeah,
that's so true. Wow. I'm really just over here deep diving. I'm glad that I'm having a
I
conversation with you
know. Oh,
because
yeah, I just Twilight is my Roman Empire.
as it should be. Um, before we wrap up, I am curious. I had mentioned like who was your favorite Cullen in the first movie. Does Alice stay your favorite Cullen throughout the
Oh,
entire
100%.
saga? Validly so.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
Like, especially like you talked about it a little bit, like her going cold turkey in the last book and in the last movies, and like just how like smart she is. Like knowing what her gift is and knowing how the Volturi especially use it against her, and
Mm-hmm.
especially like knowing I think her and Edward's relationship is really special. Really get to dig into it in the last book because basically, Edward unwillingly is always reading her mind. And so whenever she has a vision, he has that too. And
Yeah.
that knowledge is like a gift and a curse. We see that, right? Like, because of the way
Mm-hmm.
that Arrow can use his gift against them. And so I think it's so, so smart. You see how smart she is in the last book when she starts to have all of these visions and realizations of what's to come. And she's like, I have to protect my family. I have to protect Edward because if Arrow gets to Edward, he'll get to my information. And so the way that she like left all these clues for Bella, the one person who was protected against all of this, like she's
Mm-hmm.
just so smart and it's like such an intricate like way she went about all of it. I'm obsessed. I love her so much. She's a genius.
Hmm. Yeah. I agree because I call it the geniusy, not a true word, I know, but the geniusy of it all.
Yes.
And then I love that she's a ride or die. Once again, I always go back to like that new moon scene where she's like, she's getting Bella. She's like, wait, listen, we gotta go save him. This is what's happening. And she's rooming in Italy, and I love that. She's a ride or die. Um, I
Yes.
appreciate that 100%. I do wish this is completely like not that big of a deal, but I wish they would have kept her like proper pixie cut. When they
Yes.
smoothed it down, I was like, what happened?
Yeah.
But
Where are the
okay.
spikes?
Yeah, I was like, what happened? But it's fine. She was I feel like that showed a evolution of her character maybe. She was a little bit more, you know, what's the right like response. She's always responsible though, but maybe I don't know, maybe they were trying to tell us something with the hair.
Yeah.
Before we do officially wrap up, I like to do rapid fire questions. So these are
Yes, yes, yes.
questions I'm gonna throw at you. You
Okay.
answer fast. They're not trivia. They're just kind of like opinionated questions. Okay.
Okay. I'm ready.
Um, best villain, best Twilight villain.
Best villain in my opinion, I think Victoria. We talked about it. She's got like such an intricate like Victoria slash Riley, like them as a pair,
As a
like
pair.
such a intricate system and like honestly way more well thought out than the Volturi.
I 100% agree. Yeah, I would say she's best villain too. If I were to say scariest villain, I agree with Arrow when you said
Oh my
earlier.
gosh.
Best villain that I wish wasn't a villain would be Laurent because like, I
I
feel like
know.
he had such high potential. Um, if you had to only watch one Twilight movie for the rest of your life, which one is it?
Hmm. For the rest of my life, I think I'm going the first one, the OG. OG
Oh,
for
yeah.
the nostalgia, the soundtrack, and the like feels you get from that like that first I don't know, like the butterflies you get in your stomach from their first
Mm,
moments. I think I could happily rewatch the first one over and over.
Badly so. Yeah. I see. I used to be, like I said, I was a New Moon girly.
Mm.
I think I would have to do the first one too, but New Moon's pretty darn close. New Moon's pretty darn close. Random fun one. If you like, what do you think your wolf color would be?
I think and this is not because I'm obsessed with Seth, but I think I would look the most like him, like but somewhere between him and Leah, like a paler color, sandy
Mm,
color moment.
yeah.
Even though I have dark hair, I don't feel like that translates
Mm,
into my wolf form, my
yeah.
my wolf sona.
Yeah. I actually really love like the Jacob orange, but I don't think it would
Mm,
be like it would be a little bit more brown. Like yes, he's brown, but he's like orange though.
he
I
is
really
orange.
yeah. So I would say somewhere between like a brown like a mixture. I don't know how I would get there, but a brownish, orangish gray, like just mix them all together with a
Mm.
little bit of gray. I don't know.
Oh,
Because I really love the
beautiful.
gray. I don't know. They all like I said, the CGI was A plus plus when they did it, and
Yes.
it looks legit. What is your fave meme that has come out of the Twilight Saga? And it can just be
My
imagery. It doesn't have to be the words too.
my favorite, actually, in relation to the wolf CGI, when
Yeah.
Kristen Stewart is like having to pet Taylor Lautner, but he's in like the green suit with just
Oh
his
yeah.
little head, and that is so funny to me. That is one of my favorites.
Wow, that's a good one. I haven't. That's so funny because I don't see that one often. Like, I gotta search that picture up because I'm like imagining it. I remember I've seen it, but I literally have not seen it in a minute. Um, for me, currently this changes periodically, but in my adult era of stress and time, and the one that's most relatable to me is Miss Bella sitting in a chair staring out a window.
Oh my god!
Especially like someone had said like it posted the picture and they were like, "This is me currently right now." Like, yes, it's 100% valid. I think that one's for me for sure, for sure.
I
Oh, I
just
see the
sent you the
picture. Yeah.
picture.
See, why did I think he was in a green suit?
I thought it was green too, but I
That
guess it's
is
just great. But that is
hilarious.
really funny to me. Like, oh my god.
That's a good one. Yeah.
No, but yeah,
Oh.
Bella in front of the window. That is like, and it's funny because it goes through like the months where a lot of people, myself
Mhm.
included, get like that seasonal depression, and it's like that is
Mhm.
100% how it feels, especially as an adult,
Accurate.
like working 40 hours a week. I feel like I come home from work and I just do that in front of my window. I'm like, and
Mm-hmm.
then it's time for the next day.
Literally. Yeah. Like the only difference is that we gotta get back up. She got back up at some point. We just didn't see it in that section of time. But like sometimes like life be really going that fast where you
Mhm.
see the window, you're looking at the wall, plot twist, it's the next month. Like, yeah.
Yes.
So that is just super relatable, especially in adulthood. The struggles of a 40-hour work week. I
Oh my
100%
god.
am there with you. Um, that's it. That summarizes our Twilight convo, our recap, our adoration for Twilight. Thank you so much, Gabby, for joining this episode. I feel like we could talk about Twilight forever, but
Yeah, we could definitely get like I think at least 6 months worth of content out of us from that. But
for sure.
thank you for having me, Kayvana. This is so fun.
Of course.
I'm glad to have someone who like just gets it. They
Yes,
just
right?
get
Like
it.
I learned so much just by like really having an internal deep dive. So I can't wait to rewatch and find new things to discover or reread too. I don't know if I'm gonna reread
um,
it this year, but it's been on my list for a minute to reread it. Um, but thank you so much again. Thank you so much, listeners, for joining. Twilight lovers, share your joy of Twilight in the comments. Respond to the questions in if you're listening on Spotify. Make sure you share, like, and follow this podcast. Send it to a friend, a family member, a loved one, a Twilight fan. Follow me at Kavana on Instagram to get podcast updates and at the Introvert Social Hour on TikTok. Get some sunshine, get some air, have an amazing week. I will see you next week on the Introvert Social Hour. Thanks for joining.